on digital at sea. I would just like to mention that for those of you who don't know, we started the IALA Symposium on VTS and e-navigation on Monday from the studio in Rotterdam, a virtual event with several hundred participants. And we have timed this webinar so that you can join the symposium platform at 1 o'clock when it starts. So we have a hard deadline here. We have to be finished a little bit before 1 o'clock with this webinar, and I hope you will join the symposium after the webinar. I will just share my screen here for some PowerPoints. And as usual, I would like to ask you to mute your microphones and turn off your camera when you're not speaking, and there will be some questions and answer period after the presentations. Today we will hear from 3 speakers. I think you all know the speakers, no need for long introduction. Andreas Norseth is the Director General of the Danish Maritime Authority, and he will talk about the Digital at Sea initiative. It originally came from him, and also mention a possible role for IALA in this initiative. Then Sunbae Hong from Ministry of Ocean and Fishery in Korea will talk about Digital at Sea Asia Pacific, and specifically the cluster and capacity building part of the Digital at Sea. And then Ed Wendland, who is the president of RTCM, will talk about the North American Digital at Sea conference and the plan for this year's conference. As you probably all know, this e-navigation underway series of conferences has taken part for some years now. We have an international one hosted by the Danish Maritime Authority, normally in the ferry, on board the ferry between Copenhagen and Oslo. And then we have the North American e-navigation underway. It has been in North America, in the US, and also in Canada. We had the e-navigation underway in Newfoundland in Canada some years ago, and Canada has also the Canadian Coast Guard has been invited to join this organizing team. And then we have the e-navigation underway in Asia Pacific. It has been in Korea, but it could be at any country in the Asia Pacific area. And these great events have been organized by the Danish Maritime Authority, the Ministry of Ocean and Fishery, and the US Coast Guard, together with RTCM in the North American part. And IALA is the coordinating body for these events. It all began in 2011. It's actually 10 years ago, when the first e-navigation underway international conference was hosted on board the ferry. I was then the Deputy Director General in Denmark, and Omar was the Director for the e-navigation department. So we have been involved in this all the 10 years. After the e-navigation underway conferences, the conference agree on some conclusions and recommendations, also called highlights. And these are actually sent to relevant organizations, and they are used as inspiration and future developments in the e-navigation committee and other committees in IALA. When you look at the conferences from 2011 until now, you see that they have changed quite a lot. Many things have happened since 2011, and the things that are discussed during the conference has changed considerably. In the beginning, in 2011 and some years ahead, the main discussion was about what is e-navigation. There was quite a lot of confusion about what is e-navigation, and we spent a lot of time discussing what this new thing was that would change the maritime sector. And then, and it was mainly all participants were from authorities, engineers and authority people were discussing at the first conferences. And then we were joined by the manufacturers. They got interested and it became more and more obvious what e-navigation was, and the manufacturers started to work, and there were lots of test beds, and test beds were discussed heavily after 2013-14. And now the latest thing is that we have been joined by the ship owners, and that is really positive because that means that we start to create a business case and that the ship owners start to buy in on these new projects, which is very good. The big challenge for the future is that we cannot rely on all these test beds and regional solutions. International global harmonization of standards is absolutely necessary for a successful implementation of the ambitious digital maritime agenda. And I think that is the challenge for the future and something that Digital at Sea can help us to solve. So I look enormously forward to the results of the Digital at Sea conferences that will cover a much more broader area of the digitalization at sea, but the speakers after me will explain much more about that. We will have the Digital at Sea conference series instead of the e-navigation on the way. There will be a capacity building component and also a sea cluster that Sunbei Hong will describe more in details. So with this few opening remarks, I would like to give the floor to Andreas Norset, who will speak to us about the initiative itself and also a possible role for Ayala. So the floor is yours, Andreas. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Francis, and thank you to you and your staff in Ayala for facilitating this webinar. And I think I should start by saying that all of us that has been involved in e-navigation underway and have had and have these ambitions on digital at sea, we all hope that 2021 should be sort of the big lift-off year, but COVID-19 has changed everything. So now we hope that there will be a few startups this year, and then for the international session it'll probably be next year. So anyway. As Francis mentioned, I will try to say something about the reasoning behind this initiative and also in a, you could say, a broad perspective, the way forward. I don't know, can you see my screen now?
Yes, it's perfect, Andreas. We see your screen.
Very good, very good. I just need to get back to it. Okay, so anyway, the Digital at Sea, as Francis already mentioned, we have had this e-navigation underway concept, a series of conferences, which I must say has been very successful. And I would say also that a huge amount of credit should be given to those who came up with the idea and those who have run with the conference initially, both in Denmark with the international perspective and in Korea for the Asia Pacific, and also in North America, those who have done it. Because I think it's, in my view, one of the most successful conference series that has been in the domain of digitalization and e-navigation. And you could say also that looking back on the past 10 years, that e-navigation, and very much sort of fronted by the conference, the e-navigation underway concept, it has been sort of the spearhead of digitalization. And it has been very successful in the terms that about 100 and 150 people from all over the world has sort of 2 to 3 times per year gathered, exchanged views on things and defined pilot projects. And as Francis just showed, there's been a lot of concepts on the table, ranging from what is e-navigation, then maritime cloud, cybersecurity, satellite-based AIS, so on and so forth. However, 10 years down the road, if you look at sort of what is actually happening on e-navigation and digitalization in the global maritime domain, I think we all just need to realize that there's a very, very slow dissemination into the maritime domain. So we have a lot of people, 100 and 150, maybe even more, that have worked hard with the test beds, pilot projects, and really showed that digitalization, digital tools and systems can really make a difference in terms of safety, security, efficiency on a broad scale. But there's a very, very slow dissemination into the maritime domain. It's not picking up. And one of the challenges that we have is, just as Francis excellently put, is that we need standards. We don't have agreements on, so if we're going to exchange navigation information or some administrative information, we don't have a global standard. So it's very difficult to have global systems. And I think this is a very important reason behind sort of why the shipping industry is very slow on investing in the systems. So what we have been thinking is that we really need to think in a much broader sense on who are we going to get together in defining standards, and also try to really get systems disseminated, sort of plugged into the maritime world, so they can actually on a broad scale start to make a difference. So we need a much broader, much wider digital ecosystem than we have today. And with this idea, we were some people starting to think we have this very, very, I would say, fruitful and successful event series called e-navigation underway. If we widen the focus and make a broader agenda, then maybe we can get much more people on board and then try to make it lift off. And that is actually the reasoning behind the Digital at Sea, that we are rebranding it to promote a stronger, concrete digital transformation, that we can get the right people on board so that we can still work with newer converging technologies and demand for new ways of thinking. So you could say the spirit of the e-navigation underway is still on board in the Digital at Sea, very much indeed, but we try to widen the participants so we get much more regulators and stakeholders on board, and get people to work more together on having an international focus, so that we can actually get digital systems implemented around in the world. And for this, we also need, definitely, we need you could say, a center of gravity. And this is where I think that it fits so perfectly that IALA is now transforming from an NGO to an IGO. And I think that one of the very important roles of IALA in the future, in my personal perspective, will be that IALA simply needs to set itself as the center of gravity for defining standards within the digital domain. Standards, cooperation, dissemination of systems, facilitating also that stakeholders and governments from all over the world can gather and sit under the IALA umbrella and agree on how to actually get digital systems into the oceans. And that is why we really need still to have IALA on board as a key partner for the Digital at Sea conference, so that we do have an international organization that is sort of can be taking the role as a center of gravity for getting systems disseminated into the maritime domain. So this is basically very much the message on the reasoning behind and the ambitions for Digital at Sea. It's still supposed to have sort of three, at least for the conference series, three versions. There's the international conference where we expect, again, COVID-19 permitting, that we in early 22, also on board the ferry to Oslo, will have the first international conference under the Digital at Sea concept. And then there's the Asia Pacific conference that I'm quite sure Sunbay will mention. And then we have the North America conference, which we also will hear about in a short while. So that we are moving ahead with this. And then, as Sunbay will elaborate on, to ensure that Digital at Sea is not only conferences that are sort of working with exchange of knowledge, but there's also a concrete support support for countries to actually implement digital solutions. There's both the capacity building and other things, and I'm quite sure that Sunbay will mention more about this. So with this, that is actually my pitch, and I look very much forward to hear the other presenters here and also to have questions. So with this, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andreas, for this, can I say, very, very ambitious prediction for the future, which is, of course, fully supported by Ayala. We agree completely to your views, and we'll do everything we can to support this new initiative. Thank you so much. I will then leave the floor to Sunbay Hong. Sunbay, are you ready to tell us a bit about your ambitious plan for capacity building and Digital at Sea clusters in plural? Sunbay, the floor is yours.
Yep. Thank you, Francis. Do you hear me clear and louder?
Yes, all is good, yes. Sunbay. We hear you loud and clear.
For the time being, I cannot see my presentation file on the screen. I believe that Mr. John will prepare my presentation.
Can you give me a second, please?
Yes. Okay. Anyway, I'm very pleased to make my presentation with my backside. You can see my backside is the Korean e-navigation center. We have 9 Korean e-navigation centers like this, as you can see from my backside. So we officially launched our e-navigation service since last January. So for the time being, all Korean domestic vessels operated around the Korean peninsula, they use the Korean e-navigation service by using their S100 electronic charter system or mobile phone application with several smart navigation service. While we waiting for preparing my presentation by Mr. John from Ayala, I'm say very good morning and good afternoon and good evening to all of you. This is Sunbay, as introduced by Francis from Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries Korea. Today, I'm going to make a presentation on Digital at Sea cluster and capacity building together, but I'm focusing on my presentation for Digital at Sea cluster primarily as an important collaboration to achieve the goal of the Digital at Sea initiative, as explained by Mr. Andreas Noses and Francis earlier. Next slide, please. Oh. So my presentations briefly introduce why we need a global cluster and how to organize the operate it, as well as the concept of the cluster. Next, please. Next slide, please. Yes. So first, I'd like to introduce the global trend and future prospect in maritime sector in terms of digitalization. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the global trend of maritime digitalization from 2006, as all of you know well. Navigation has been a stepping stone towards the maritime digitalization and the fourth industrial revolution in the maritime sectors, including MaaS, the autonomous ships, smart port, and smart logistics, maritime logistics, and also e-navigation and the other digital technical services. So the series of e-navigation on the way conference under the IR umbrella has played a pivotal role in facilitating the e-navigation over the world, and several e-navigation instances are now operated in some areas, including Korea and European side. Next slide, please. This slide shows the Korean e-navigation service named the Smart Navigation. The Korean Smart Navigation is one of the e-navigation instances, and it has been officially started since last January this year. The Smart Navigation service, including several services you can see on the slide on the left above side, collision grounding warning service from the center to all vessels, maritime safety information service, and route planning service, just like the car navigation, and also the other the automatic departure and arrival report to the port authority, and SOS or something like that. And also the users can use video call between vessels with the vessel which is equipped with the S100 ECS, electronic charter system. They can make a video call together, and also they can make a video call in emergency to the shore side, like the BTS center or our navigation center for 24 hours. And the ships and users, as you can see the right side of the slide, the users are using the smart navigation service by mobile phone. The application, we distribute the e-navigation application on the website. So for the time being, more than 15,000 users loaded this application. They can receive our e-navigation service. And also, we are now going to distribute more than 30,000 S100 electronic charter system to the ships to receive our e-navigation service and to keep the digital communication between shoreside centers and also the S100 ECS equipped vessel together. So the right side above show the S100 electronic charter system that can use our e-navigation service, and below side is just a mobile phone using now the e-navigation application. This application shows some users use the route planning service, just like the car navigation. Next slide, please. So the Korea operate e-navigation service based on the MCP. MCP is the Maritime Connectivity Platform, as you can see on the slide. The concept of the Maritime Connectivity Platform, and it is used by our e-navigation service, Korea side, and also STM service by the Navlink in European side for the time being, I believe. The Maritime Connectivity Platform is a platform enabling hyperconnectivity across different stakeholders in maritime sectors in Korean side. This platform has several functions. First, ID and certificate for users and stakeholders, including all S100 ECS equipment. And also, they provide the hyperconnectivity among users and stakeholders and centers, something like that. Also, keeping seamless providing and using e-navigation service around the Korean Peninsula. So you can find more information on the MCP platform on the website. I just right on the right side of the slide, the http maritimeconnectivity.net. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the future prospect of maritime digitalizations. As you can see on the slide, as this year, e-navigation services has been already launched, just like the Navolink STM service in the European side, and our smart navigation service provided by our ministry to the all vessels operated around the Korean Peninsula nowadays. So as this year, we see such kind of navigation service instance over the world. Also, the autonomous ship development is being carried out worldwide very rapidly. And now digitalization has become something inevitable trend based on user needs, not government side or international organization based. This is just user needs, I believe. In this wave of change, the most critical factor we need to consider is harmonization. Just Andreas talking about the global harmonization and standard. This is very important. But however, how can we get harmonization, global harmonization for the maritime digitalization? That is very big challenge, I think. Next slide, please. So now let's look at some expected effectiveness of maritime digitalization before we move to the cluster discussion. Next slide. As of now, as you know well, the maritime sector has focused on the securing safety and efficiency under the IMO umbrella through analog-based technology. However, with this approach, it is very hard for us to quickly respond to the changes and keep the balance between safety and efficiency. If a country wants to increase the safety, they should give up some amount of efficiency of their shipping side, but they want to increase the efficiency, they want to lose some part of the safety regulation. So safety and efficiency is a little bit contradictory for the time being in every country, I believe so. Next slide, please. However, digital-based technology such as e-navigation is able to achieve harmonizations of safety and efficiency together, and also environmental protection. So we can think of the greenhouse gases, just like the CO2, we can remove or reduce the amount of the CO2 like this through using the e-navigation, because we can increase the efficiency of the port operation and of ships operation. And next slide, please. So many people say the global maritime community expect that e-navigation will provide us with several benefits. The IMO already said in its e-navigation strategy implementation plan that e-navigation will cut off 65% of collision and around marine accident. And also the 2018 Port CDM community said that the port operation cost will be saved up to $12 billion globally by introducing the small maritime digitalization. And also, I myself anticipated that the ship's bunker would be saved up to $10 billion over the world. So that is why maritime digitalization become a globally inevitable trend based on user needs because of this kind of benefits to all stakeholders over the world. Next slide, please. Next, I'm I'm going to talk about challenges we face and how to resolve them regarding maritime digitalization. Next slide, please. So actually, there was a MOU on global navigation testbed since 2014. So initiated by 3 countries, Korea, Sweden, Denmark, and later stage, 2 countries, Australia and China, joined this MOU together. But you can see some kind of challenges on the slides that I had experienced in the case of a former MOU on global innovation testbed. First, without a clear need to comply with digital technology to an international obligation, there is a limitation for administration to participate in the testbed together. Secondly, without a best practice and service instances verifying and validating its global harmonization, effectiveness, and benefits to all stakeholders, the concerns on e-navigation will be rested and continue among industries and users. Next slide, please. So the cluster is a kind of goal-based collaboration for implementation or facilitation of maritime digitalization of the world. The cluster needs to be carried out under the goal-based collaboration to implement the service as a result of the test bed. So to the end, the cluster needs to make an effort to put into place the clear international obligation at IMO level, while creating best practices and actual service instances at the same time. Next slide, please. I remember that at the last Innovation on the Way conference, Asia Pacific, Ms. Gillian emphasizes during the conference, during her presentation, she asked, what do you think the meaning of the cooperation is? So among many answers during the conference we got, the most notable one was harmonization and together sharing and collaboration like this. Harmonization is always very important factor. So the impact of digital technology in various fields will become greater when they harmonize with each other globally. I also believe that it's very important to verify technology through global technical collaboration and research and development activities together, and verifying and validating the effectiveness towards stakeholders about the maritime digitalization. Next slide, please. So this slide is going to talking about the harmonization mentioned earlier. In the future, we want to build a digital edge cluster as a collaborative framework to make an effort together globally to make harmonization and make a standardization that globally agree with each other, and also to boost global cooperation and harmonization of maritime digital technologies. Thus, we would like to propose the digital sea route as the part of our cluster, the first, the testbed project. Next slide, please. This slide shows the concept of a global digital sea route testbed from Korea to European side. So around the Korean peninsula, we are trying to showing the Korean navigation services to the ships, and during the passing the Singapore Strait, maybe the vessel can receive navigation service like piracy or strait passage information. So So if the ship arrive at around the Gulf of Aden, they can receive some kind of piracy information or phishing or the warships warships escorting service or something like that. And during the Suez Canal, we experienced very big accidents just 2 weeks ago. So we can provide navigation services, include the canal passage or ship traffic information for the Suez Canal. And European side, we can provide some kind of STM services as Navrink now provides its services like this. So the ships should be, this container ship is real ships operated between Korea and European side. For example, H&M shipping maybe participate in this test bed together. So the H&M container ship would be equipped with 100 electronic active system to receive the several kinds of navigation service from Korea, Singapore, Gulf of Aden, Suez Canal, and European side together. And also, this global digital sea route testbed should be operated based on the maritime connectivity platform to provide hyperconnectivity among all stakeholders from Korean side to the European side. So this is very my concept. You can see the center of this slide. You can see there is a MCP log, and the left side, the European navigation system. I just wrote EMSA, a European Maritime Safety Agency. This is just my idea for the time being, but I think it's very valuable for us to contact with EMSA to make a shore-based platform to provide the navigation service to the European side, or maybe Navrink, which is now providing STM service, could be one European platform to provide navigation service. So our side, our ministry will open and operate our platform navigation service like this to make a connect with the European side together to validate and verify the interoperability and the effectiveness of our service together. So maybe the maritime safety information will be the first target to provide this global digital sea route testbed ships. Then we can try the S100 active system or electronic navigation chart update, automatic update, or streaming service like this. Route planning service also will be one items to be tested through this global digital sea route testbed. I believe this testbed could be participated by every stakeholders, including industries, service providers. In terms of that, the RCTM is going to make a presentation just after me, but RCTM is very important actors to participate in this sea route testbed because of the standardization of industry, especially ECS system, which is adopted with the S100 standard, globally agreed already. And also shipping company, as I told you, H&M and Korean shipping or the other shipping company can participate as the test bed to receive the navigation service globally from Korean port to the European side, including the beer ports like Singapore or Suez Canal like that. And also port or administration, just like that, Danish Maritime Authority, SMA, our ministry, and the other administration can participate in this test bed together as a kind of regulators and also co-responding to the IMO or IRR in terms of the maritime digitalization. Next slide, please. this slide shows some kind of time frame and roadmap I propose to carry out digital sea cluster under the digital sea initiatives. So you can see the most above side, we need to organizing this sea route, digital sea route test bed over the world, including the Asian side and the European side together. And the maybe 2023, we can start this digital sea route test bed little step by step. So our ministry is going to carry out some kind of feasibility study on the global digital sea route test bed together with the European side, including IALA, later this year. Then next year, I believe that I try to secure some kind of budget to support this test bed globally to start from 2023. So to operate this test bed, to secure some kind of effectiveness and practical effectiveness of this test bed, we need to contract some kind of MOU on digital sea cluster among the participants, especially the participants to these digital IC initiatives together. And also digital sea conferences will be respectively held by Denmark Maritime Authority and North America and Asia Pacific. So our first edition of the Asia Pacific Digitalization Conference would be held at the coming September this year. Of course, I'm going to discuss with IALA closely regarding the program of the first edition of Digitalization Conference Asia Pacific this year. And also, in the case of the capacity building, now I ask IMO to join this capacity building together as one of the ITCP program. So last week we start negotiation with IMO for this capacity building. So we carried out several years this capacity building, but we are going to modify this capacity building in terms of the digital SC initiatives this year. So I'm going to discuss the detailed program with IALA together. So the capacity building workshop would be co-organized by IMO, IALA, and our ministry or some participant country together. The country that participate in these digital SC initiatives together. So while we preparing this kind of roadmap and time frame, we need to keep in mind that the participant make an effort to put into place the clear international obligation at IMO together. Because we already adopted e-navigation standardization at the IMO at 2019, but we also need to discuss on the adopt the standard e-navigation standard into SOLAS or something like that from now on, step by step, together with member states that participate in these digital SC initiatives together. So next slide, please. Next slide. So, of course, I omit some part of the explanation on the capacity building. The mainly capacity building will be composed of some advanced country and the developing country together. So the both countries can share their opinions and what kind of concerns the developed country have to implement the e-navigation or maritime digitalization in their coastal area. The advanced country can consult the roadmap or some kind of technology to the developing country to facilitate the maritime digitalization together, all over the world together. So that is very important to share the benefits among all member states together, not only to a specific countries or regions like that. So the capacity building is very important. So this slide is my conclusions. The maritime digitalization is, as I told you, is an inevitable trend. So this kind of new paradigm to pursue both goal of safety and efficiency and also environmental protection. However, the harmonization, global harmonization is one of the challenges we have to solve. So the digital sea cluster will be a very good cases or tools to provide such kind of global harmonization by this joint effort over the world. That is my presentation, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Sunbay, for this very inspiring and ambitious presentation, Sunbay, and rest assured that Ayala will, of course, assist you as much as we can. I think your sea route testbed created a lot of reaction here on the chat. And I guess you know that Andreas Norset is the chairman of the board of EMSA, so you have the right person there to negotiate with after the webinar. With this, I will rush to the next speaker, Ed Wendland, who is the president of RTCM, and I will simply leave the floor to you, Ed. Take it away. Thank you.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, Francis. I hope everyone can hear me fine.
Yeah, all good. Yes.
Sharing the screen.
Yeah, we can see your pictures, Ed. Just go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to say good morning, and good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants. My name is Ed Wendland. We are with RTCM. I'm the president, and we'd like to share the plans for the Digital at Sea North America that have been in development with the U.S. and Canadian Coast Guard, mariners, industry representatives, and Ayala. And also would like to thank the two former presentations for the excellent summaries of what's going on. We're probably a little behind in the program. It said we're ENAV North America, but I think we have a very determined group to try and catch up, if you will. So I did label these slides as Digital at Sea North America. We'll address that a little bit later on how we actually brand the next conference. I'd just like to say that the last eNavigation Underway North America conference was held in November 2019. And although it was less than 18 months ago, it does seem much longer than that, likely due to the COVID. And it is worth reviewing the conference topics to refresh our collective memory of our recent focus and the conclusions and recommendations we had at a very successful conference. I also have a couple of slides about the theme and program for the upcoming conference and general plans for the future. The theme and tagline of the last conference, as seen here, are enabling e-navigation today and tomorrow, and then the taglines, building the infrastructure and reaping the benefits from that effort. We were fortunate to have excellent keynote and luncheon speakers. We had the Deputy Commandant for Operations of the U.S. Coast Guard, the Secretary General of Ayala, and the Deputy Commissioner for Operations of the Canadian Coast Guard. One of the goals of the conference steering committee was to ensure broad participation across all maritime interests, commercial mariners, fleet operators, government agencies, port authorities, and academia. The steering committee prioritized the topics of general interest from these groups and put them into 3 sessions. An outline of session 1 and 2 are seen here. Session 1 really covered many of the significant infrastructure requirements still to be developed or implemented to deal with eNavigation's information management framework. The material conveyed a sense of when and how those initiatives will affect the activities. And the presentations also discussed supporting services such as communications links and how information is to be presented. You can see we had dedicated presentations on IMO developments, the Smart Navigation Project presented, MCP, electronic ship reporting, connectivity, which was primarily an update on satellite bandwidth availability. And then we also covered coal rig challenges facing autonomous vessel operators. And in the second session, we had North American governmental plans and programs and acknowledgement of government's role as a major provider of the infrastructure supporting e-navigation. We covered both Canadian and US activities in this session, which is particularly important given the shared waterways in the Pacific Northwest, Great Lakes, and the St. Lawrence Seaway. We had excellent presentations from the US Army Corps of Engineers, NOAA Office of Coast Survey, US Coast Guard Office of Navigation, Canadian Coast Guard Aids to Navigation and Waterways, and also a presentation on cybersecurity. For session 3 was on new technology and tools. Many new technologies and tools present challenges to managers and mariners alike. Keeping abreast of the changes, updates, and innovation is critical because of their impact on the operations, procurement, training, and a host of similar factors. Understanding new technology and tools, their uses and benefits was particularly important in order to avoid problems integrating them into the functioning systems. User understanding of the shortfalls and critical input from users to the manufacturers is an absolute necessity. And one of the goals of the session was to stimulate that kind of input. We discussed RCN and the use of augmented reality, obstacle zone by target, the OTZ, information display system, smart technology providing the tangible benefits of the maritime industry, and e-navigation and passage planning, and also sea traffic management. Session 4, of course, was a wrap up, and the closing session was responsible for reviewing the key points raised in preceding sessions, providing for a discussion of points raised, formulating the conclusions and recommendations for submission to IALA for further distribution. And we spent about 5 to 10 minutes with each session moderator summarizing his or her session. And this process worked very well to help remain focused and capture the feedback from each session. So a list of our conclusions, I'll just go through here very quickly. I think we're running a little short on time. Was connectivity and data sharing are key elements. Standardizing and harmonization, as Sunbay mentioned earlier, we have the same issues here in North America and desires. Ship owners and operators will likely invest in onboard ship reporting apps if they address the reporting requirements in ports. Recognition of new systems, Iridium, Beidou, GMDSS service providers. Cybersecurity is, of course, a growing concern. Maritime services in general, the MCP, augmented and mixed reality, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer River Information System was noted as important conclusions. Based on the conclusions and other feedback from the delegates, we had the list of recommendations, and they're all listed here. And I think I saw them also posted. You can get to them from the new Digital at Sea website. So if you can't capture them, you can find them there. The automated ship reporting system should allow countries to continue to receive forms created on the ship reporting database. We need to consider using the future standard for route plan exchange as a basis and integrate other data elements as extensions. Cybersecurity needs to be considered, including a framework for secure identity management as provided by the MCP. Existing data standards need to be enhanced. And then the last few are activities need to ensure they consider improving standardization for the maritime domain. Maritime service expansion should be worked on to ensure harmonization of services and continued development of autonomous maritime radio devices and identities. Continue to monitor and support work by public authorities to establish compatible systems for electronic exchange of information, and monitoring the deployment and testing of new satellite systems coming online, such as OneWeb, which really several of the systems discussed at our meeting just increased the bandwidth available to the mariner manyfold. So moving on to the theme and program outline for the next Digital at Sea North America. The steering committee came up with the theme of navigating our digital waterways. We will have a session on e-navigation plans and implementation. The steering committee really chose the theme for the conference to recognize changes that are occurring in maritime technology, the increasing availability of technology and new standards that are in place. There is rapid change underway. While the industry buzzword is digitalization, as standard organizations, RTCM, IALA, we can facilitate these efforts to a degree and lead the discussion about when, where, why the shipping industry should be plugging in and how the new standards can improve their efforts. The first session is the essentially update on strategic implementation plan, IALA Digital at Sea update, and IHO developments. The second session on North American governmental plans and programs is represented by the listed agencies. The NOAA and Canada Hydrographic Service plan to discuss developments related to S100 in US and Canada in particular. And overall, these first two sessions are designed to help us evoke answers to the questions: what are the plans out there? When will it happen? What's happening now? What are their benefits? And how can partners contribute? Sessions 3 through 5 will address e-navigation on the horizon and today. The topics are VDES and its potential use with ASM and PNT solutions, e-navigation via LEO, broadcast notice to mariners over the World Wide Web, WAMS, which is Waterway Assessment and Management System 2.0, the River Information Service update, under-keel clearance, weather via ship, weather via AIS from shore, and a look at the Antigua single window reporting system. And it will end in the report and the wrap-up session, as we have done in the past, and I believe all the conferences are set for the same format. Just quickly, some general plans for the future conference are to alternate the conferences between US and Canada, to hold them in conjunction in Canada with the Canadian Mariners Workshop, seeking opportunities to hold in conjunction with RTCM and NMEA annual events, and to also resolve the conflict with our government fiscal year and in proximity to the Digital at Sea Asia Pacific. But these are minor issues, but may affect the timing of the upcoming conference. Some of you may have noticed that we're missing something here in North America. If you're thinking about Mexico, you're right. We reached out to potential delegates from Mexico through colleagues in IEC, port authorities, and others, but have not been successful establishing contact with members in that community. So should you have any contacts that you feel would be interested in joining the Digital at Sea and e-navigation underway North America effort, please forward them along to us here. Also, due to COVID-19, the exact timing of the conference is yet to be determined. Should we manage to hold the conference prior to the next international conference, I guess we will probably revert to the e-navigation underway North America name, but we'll discuss that further with Ayala. I think time's coming up here, but I want to thank everybody for joining us, and I'll turn the floor back over to Francis.
Thank you very much, Ed, for this interesting and promising presentation, and thank you very much for keeping to the time as well. I'm afraid that we have no time for questions because it's 1 o'clock, and I know some of our speakers have to leave now for other commitments. And also the symposium starts in a minute here in Rotterdam on the platform, symposium platform. Today will be all about communication and connectivity. So I ask you to change your screen and log on to the symposium platform. I would like to thank our 3 speakers very, very much for these 3 very interesting presentations. I think we have a lot to discuss and think about. I will just leave you all with one single question, and that is, why is harmonization so difficult? When everybody talks about harmonization, everybody wants harmonization, but nobody wants to be harmonized. Why is harmonization so difficult? And you can answer by using the chat function, please. So give your ideas of why harmonization is so difficult and what Ayala can do to help harmonizing the digital world. That would be extremely helpful, and we will use your answers in the future work in Ayala. So thank you very much to our speakers. Thank you very much to all of you, more than 100 people who joined this webinar. I'm really, really grateful, and I wish you a good day, and please change to the symposium platform. Thank you so much to all. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.